Hello, everybody. Welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Friday, October 22nd, 2021, or week 7, or as we're all calling it these days, Bye-pocalypse. We know it's a lot of bye weeks this week. I'm your host, George Kerth, here with Cody Roadcap. We're going to take you through everything you need to know to navigate this week 7 of the NFL. Cody, how you doing here heading into Bye-pocalypse?
Doing good, stocking up on my canned goods, bottled water, third string running backs, everything I need headed into the weekend.
Third string quarterbacks at this point, even. Starting Case Keenum in 2 leagues because of a bunch of quarterback injuries and such. I mean, you guys will know how this goes when you're listening to it. I'm still crossing my fingers over here. It's getting bad. But at least hopefully we're getting it out of the way here this week. And then we can have a little bit more fun in the weeks to come. But it's okay. We're still going to try to find ways to get you some wins this week. And you can also check out, on top of the show here, on the couchgms.com, Cody went and did a starts and sits article for the week. Give you a better idea of what to go for. You can also check us out on social medias. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the Couch GMs. So before we go and outlook our week 7 here, why don't we jump in and look at a little bit of NFL news. NFL news, we did cover a lot of things on our Tuesday show, so if you missed it, go head back out and check it out. But a big thing has been ramping back up as the trade deadline is getting close. The Deshaun Watson rumors are heating up again. So there's a lot of conflicting reports on how serious. I know there's a report that I heard that it is a 60-40 shot, 60% chance says he gets traded, 40% chance says he stays, of Deshaun Watson getting moved before the deadline. Cody, how have you heard about the Deshaun Watson rumors?
Yeah, I know. I believe it was Tuesday, maybe Wednesday afternoon. It seemed like we were going to get a Watson Schefter bomb like that evening or the next morning. It seems to have died down a little bit. I mean, it's still the same trade, the same teams that are making the most noise. It's Miami, and then there was some talks of Denver and Washington being a third team for potentially moving Tua because it's reported that the Texans don't want Tua back at all. Like, that's not a player they're interested in. So Miami's looking for another option. I actually kind of like him going to Washington. I think that would be a good fit for Tua. Denver doesn't make any sense in my opinion. And then I don't think it happens this year for the trade deadline. So if it is a 40%, I could see that the Eagles making a push in the offseason. Unless Jalen Hurts turns it around, but I don't see them being active enough to get Watson at the deadline.
Definitely. And I saw you have on our rundown here. If Watson does go to Miami, there's potential reports of a 3-team trade that might happen.
Yeah, I don't know how that's where I was getting at with the Tua to Washington. Denver was reported, but then that rumor was debunked. But yeah, the latest I heard was a potential 3-way trade, whether it's a true 3-way trade like NBA style, or if it's 2 congruent trades similar to how Miami did in this past offseason when they traded with the 49ers and then instantly traded with the Eagles, and it was 2 separate trades, but 3 teams were involved. But like I said, because the Texans don't want Tua back, Miami is obviously going to look for a place to get rid of Tua if they do acquire Watson, and Washington was the buzz of a place that would go, which would be interesting. You know, he'd pair back up with Ryan Fitzpatrick, who is still on IR. Taylor Heineke has looked great, but let's be honest, he's not the long-term answer there in Washington either. So if they could get a young guy at a decent price, it might not be a bad option.
My last question is, I know that there's been a run on the adding Deshaun Watson in your fantasy league. Would you go out there and add Watson if you're a quarterback needy team and hope? I honestly don't think he's going to play, but what do you think?
Well, I think, this week it's tough because of the bye-pocalypse like we all talked about. But if you're heading into next week, or if you're one of the few people that aren't affected by bye and that everybody is envying right now, we talked about on the Tuesday show during waiver pickups, like you can consider adding a guy like Marlon Mack or Ronald Jones on the potential that they might be traded. Watson fits right into that category. The trade deadline is under 2 weeks away. If you want to throw him on your bench, hold him in the event he does get moved. It's not a terrible play. Don't cut someone that could be useful. Like if you're you got to evaluate your team, obviously. Like if you're struggling with buys, don't waste a spot picking up Deshaun Watson. But if you want to add him, it was the same reason why everybody was taking him at the end of fantasy drafts going into the season. Like, if you're drafting, you got to wait till week 1 to see if he actually does play. He end up not. You cut him. Maybe you pick him back up now and hope he goes to Miami. And you would think in Miami he would do well. I mean, he's used to it. Miami's offensive line is garbage, and he's used to playing behind a garbage offensive line in Houston and still putting up fantasy points. So if he ends up starting, like, he's instantly into the top tier of fantasy quarterbacks.
You're right, but I just don't know. I mean, I would assume if he did get traded to a team, he would probably start. I guess you're right. But with everything swirling over his head, there has to be a thought of, even if he gets moved, he won't play right away. One, getting used to the system. Two, trying to make sure all the legal issues are sorted out. I don't know. It's a lot for me to want to even go out there and throw a flyer on him yet. But we'll see what happens in the coming days. And I think week is trade deadline next week.
I believe it's next. It was 50. It might be 2 weeks, not quite 2 weeks. No, I think it's the end of December. Or sorry, it's definitely not the end of December. That is when the new year starts.
Wow.
The trade deadline is like the end of October. Yeah. Only thing I'm going to say is if a team does trade for him, like, they intend to play him. I would think. If they're not going to play him this year and they just want to hold his rights, just trade for him after the offseason and let Houston pay the money. Like, doesn't make, if Miami goes out and makes this deal, they're going to play him. Maybe it's not week 1, but they're going to get him up to speed as quickly as possible. So that's why I think some people are out there. I had leagues that were like, as soon as the rumor broke, they were hitting that add button. I was like, well, let's take it a little bit easy. I mean, I understand the thought process, but I'm with you. I actually don't think this deal gets done. I think it's an offseason move. There's too much speculation, too much unknown surrounding him off the field for a team to actually really invest multiple first-round picks. And I know it's costing Watson. I guess it's costing Watson more money than the Texans. But they also know, like, if this stuff clears up, his value goes up. I know it's a risk you have to take because, if it comes out on the wrong end, well, then he has no trade value and you could have gotten at least something. But that's probably enough Deshaun Watson talk because, again, we're just speculating on rumors. And you spent 5 minutes listening to us talk about Watson, and nothing's going to happen over the next 2 weeks. And then we wasted your time, wasted our time. So let's not waste any more time and get into our Week 7 fantasy outlook.
So looking forward to Week 7. Nobody's playing. Everyone's on bye. No. Teams on bye, since we have to lead it off with this. We got the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Buffalo Bills, the LA Chargers, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Dallas Cowboys. That's 5 juggernaut fantasy teams and the Jaguars.
Yeah, but they still have James Robinson, which is one of the top running backs in fantasy. So, like, it's not like they don't have valuable assets that are missing.
You're right. That's true. So, with who is left playing, we're going to give you an idea of who we like to start and who we do not like to start. And we might as well start off with the Carolina Panthers and the New York Giants. The Giants are still a mess. I think we can start there. Everyone is still hurt. We're probably not going to see Kadarius Toney this week. Probably not going to see Saquon Barkley. I think we're down to Sterling Shepard. And Sterling Shepard, it might be a great play with everybody being out this week, as long as he gets on the field.
Yeah, Sterling Shepard, though, was added to the Thursday with the hamstring injury. It was limited. I believe we also had some additions to the injury report with Evan Ingram. He's not looking great. Kenny Golladay, it's not there. The Giants are banged up. They're not a great team. I added Devontae Booker to the sit list. Like, he only had 9 points in his bye. This week they play Carolina, who's the number 1 ranked rushing defense against fantasy running backs. Like, it's not a great matchup. Daniel Jones doesn't have anyone to throw the ball to. Their defense isn't playing very well. There's not a lot of hope for the Giants. Like, why couldn't the Giants be on bye? Like, they need it because they're injured, and there's no one in fantasy I want to play, so it wouldn't have hurt my fantasy team.
Definitely. And I mean, I think the other wide receiver who was healthy last week was Darius Slayton. He doesn't impress me too much. If he's the only wide receiver healthy, he's probably someone I wouldn't play. But, like, it stinks because the other 3 big guys in that offense, like, if Sterling Shepard plays and he's basically the only wide receiver healthy, I like him as an option just because he's an explosive wide receiver. I'd probably feel the same about Kenny Galladay. I'd probably feel the same about Kadarius Toney. But if we're down to just Darius Slayton, I don't really want to play him. We got to keep an eye on what happens with Sterling Shepard. And I mean, I agree with you about Devontae Booker. He's a sketchy play, but most likely there's going to be situations where you have to play him just because of everyone being on bye. I'm in that situation in the league where I don't love this matchup either, but I have to. So don't take it like you can't play Devontae Booker because he's in a bad matchup. He might still be a better option than somebody you're finding on the waiver wire or who is a second or third string running back elsewhere.
I don't know. I'll have some like it's tough. I know, like, we'll talk about the Ravens in a little bit, but like if Latavius Murray plays or if he doesn't, like I'd probably take a flyer on one of those guys over Devontae. Like, I just don't like Devontae Booker. I was against, picking him up in the waivers. He wasn't a guy I was targeting. So I understand, why some people have him. Some people are stuck. Like, I completely get that. But hopefully you can pivot off Booker. And then if you can't, just pray he gets in the end zone. Moving on to the Carolina Panthers. They're not on bye, but they probably should have been because they can't stop dropping balls. DJ Moore can't stop dropping. Robbie Anderson, like, he forgot his hands in New York. Well, I guess he was in Carolina last year, but maybe he sent them back to New York because he has not looked great this whole season.
I heard he was going to play with Sam Darnold again, and he made the mistake of switching teams.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Terrence Marshall, he hasn't practiced all week. Tommy Tremble hasn't broken out like we thought he might have after the trade of Dan Arnold. Their defense gave up a ton of yards, and they went to overtime last week. It's not the best matchup, but I like their players' outlook a lot better than I do on the reverse side of the Giants. Like, I still think
so.
Obviously, go ahead.
So, say Sterling Shepard plays. Would you play him or Robbie Anderson?
If Sterling Shepard played, so if they were both healthy, I'd play Sterling Shepard. Like,
okay.
If there's any talks of like, well, Shepard might be on a pitch count, or we don't know, he's going to give it a go before game time and see how it does. Like, if they're talking like he's really going out there to gut it out, I might pivot to Robbie Anderson. If they're like, he's good, we rested him during the week because we needed him there on Sunday, I'd roll with Sterling Shepard. Just because Robbie Anderson's been so unreliable. I mean, I have to start him. He's my number one wide receiver in a dynasty league. Talk about how bad that is. But
that's something. And then finally, we guess we have to touch on Chuba Hubbard. He's a play. Good matchup. He's the most reliable option on the Panthers right now. So there you go.
For sure. And the Panthers did just sign Amir Abdullah. I'm not telling you to play him, but that's more of just here we go again with Christian McCaffrey. Guy can't stay healthy.
They're signing insurance running backs, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting season. Hopefully McCaffrey does get back. But let's move on to our next matchup. The New York Jets at the New England Patriots.
Hey, look, it's Robbie Anderson's hands.
Maybe. I mean, the Jets wide receivers, they could probably use them. I mean, they haven't been as bad as the Carolina Panthers were, especially last week. That was brutal. But anyways, back to the Jets-Patriots. AFC East rivalry game. The Patriots, they did look really good last week. They almost pulled off the upset against the Dallas Cowboys. It came out this week, though. I forget which player it was. Someone on one of the big defensive guys. But he said, we're not a 2-4 team. Unfortunately, you are a 2-4 team. That's what your record says, even if you feel like you're better than that. I hate to be the guy that's, correcting grammar, but yes, you are a 2-4 team. Playing pretty well. Mac Jones has been accurate. He's looked decent. He's probably the best rookie quarterback. Would you agree with that? All the rookie quarterbacks that are playing
at this point, I mean, well, yeah, because I don't think you're saying like Trey Lance doesn't appear to start. So I think out of the guys who are playing right now, yeah, it'd be him.
Yeah, he looks the best. I mean, Trevor's had his moments. I'm not saying he'll be the best at the end of the season or the start of next season, but right now he's looking the best. He seemed to really have developed a connection with Hunter Henry over the last 3 weeks. So I like playing Hunter Henry. The wide receivers, though, for the Patriots, they're still so. If you have to play one, I would probably go with Jacoby Myers. But at the same time, I did put Jacoby Myers in my sit category just because he does struggle to find the end zone, and I was surprised And you might be too, and might say, well, it's because the Jets give up so much in the ground and their defense, or they give up turnovers, so it's short fields. But the Jets are the number 2 defense against fantasy wide receivers. So take that with a grain of salt. If you think it's just because the Jets are really bad and they run all over them, so maybe it's a big game for the running backs. Maybe Jacoby Myers finally gets in the end zone. But the tight ends for the Patriots is where I'm at. Maybe not Jonnu Smith, even though he was paid like he was going to be the guy in the offseason. But Hunter Henry is one of my favorite plays at the tight ends this week.
Agree about that. And speaking of the Patriots running backs, I like Damian Harris this week because I think they could get up and get him a lot of carries. Outside of him, do you like a Ramondre Stevenson, someone like that, or are you pretty much sticking to Damian Harris?
And I'm pulling up the injury report because I didn't have that one in front of me. But I know he was a little gimpy during last week. I was seeing if he has been practicing. It does appear he hasn't been on the. So yes, I would play Damian Harris. If Harris goes, which all signs point to him going, I'm not touching Bolden, Stevenson, JT Taylor, none of those guys. Like Harris is definitely the guy.
All right. Jet side, I mean, is there anybody that you could steal that might have a good game that'll help a buy? Maybe like Jamison Crowder or Corey Davis, Jamison Crowder. And at the running back position, are you comfortable starting Michael Carter? He's been the lead guy.
I don't love it. Like I won't love it all season though. So I'd probably start Carter over Booker because I told you I didn't like.
Wow, there
Booker.
You go. Okay.
But
Carter's probably not someone that's available on the waiver wire, but he might be. He hasn't really been fantastic, but I know a lot of people swiped him up because he is a lead back, and lead backs are just worth owning, really. But
right, and again, don't hear what I'm not saying. Like I'm expecting like less than 10 points from Booker and Carter. So
Carter's broke 10 more than you'd expect, actually. But I agree, it's not like he's going to boom out for 20 points.
No, and I still think like the best thing about the Patriots is their defense. Like so, that's gonna carry up. I mean, they got past
7-0 final, and the touchdown's gonna be to Hunter Henry.
Yeah, or probably not. It'll probably be like 9-6 because they'll miss the extra point or something like that. And I don't know, but you're right. That's what it's going to be, a low scoring game, and in low scoring games, there's not a lot of fantasy options.
Yes. So probably avoid this game even if you are desperate for some plays. We can move on to a game that I expect big fantasy points from because it's 2 fantasy juggernauts here. Kansas City Chiefs traveling to the Tennessee Titans. Thank God the Chiefs are not on this bye list like the Bills and everybody else because we need somewhere to get our points. And I know that I saw Travis Kelsey on the injury report, but I believe he's going to be okay. He was limited Wednesday and Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. He's somebody that has to be in your lineup if he plays. Even if he's on a pitch count, I feel like you have to just play him, especially in this situation. Tyreek Hill, I know, is also listed as questionable, but I think he's going to be okay as well. The Chiefs in general are just banged up. And then you got Darrell Williams as well. He'll be a good play. I think it's pretty much the normal guys. I don't know if I would go outside of that this week. I wouldn't touch a Josh Gordon. I don't think I'd touch a Mecole Hardman either.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelsey, and I understand they're both banged up. If you're in, what do we call it at the beginning? We were talking. If you're in that 16-team super flex or double 2 flex league, then I might consider, a Hardman or even like a Byron Pringle type guy. Just because if Hill's out, like, or if he's limited, he might not have as many like deep plays, and then one of those guys might take it. But again, that's just if you're in that 16 league 2 flex that we talked about. Other than that, yeah, hopefully Hill's back because like if you're on all those buys and then you have Hill too, and then he's out, like that just makes fantasy so not enjoyable. This week is not great for a lot of fantasy owners, and just so you know, I'm right there with you. I am in one league and super thankful that our league doesn't require you to start a full lineup. I know some leagues are very strict about that. You have to submit a full lineup, or like I forget, either is an invalid lineup or the commissioner goes in and like forces a kicker and a defense and like cuts your 2 lowest scoring players, which is crazy in my opinion. So if you're always allow people to not play people, especially if you have set 5 or 6 teams on bye with a lot of star talent on fantasy. Like I have 7 people in buy in that league. It's not worth. It's also a good point. It's not worth to trade my team away or blow it up by putting all these good players on the waivers just to pick up 2 players to win this week. It's a long season. No one goes undefeated in fantasy football. And if they do, they're in a league that nobody knows what they're doing. You don't get that lucky. Everyone has a bad week. It's okay to take one loss in fantasy, especially this early in the season.
Definitely agree with that. Moving on to the Titans side of the ball, Derrick Henry is an absolute monster. He broke a record that I don't think is ever, like, I saw something about like he got 150 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns for 3 out of 5 weeks. 125 and 3 touchdowns for 3 out of 5 weeks, which no other active NFL player has done 3 times in their entire careers. So he's a monster.
Yeah, he's
probably
sure
won you how many leagues, how many weeks so far? He might even win you another one here. I think the biggest thing I want to talk about here with the Titans, though, is I know he had a decent week last week. AJ Brown is said to be on a pitch count for the next few weeks upcoming because they're trying to nurse his hamstring because of that injury that he missed the week with. Are you concerned at all about AJ Brown? I mean, you might not be able to, but if you have the choice, like you don't have many buys, is he somebody you're kind of fading just because of a pitch count?
Like you said, I don't think you really honestly have the choice to consider benching AJ Brown, especially this week. He hasn't practiced all week. Now, some of it could be the hamstring, but he also did suffer from food poisoning, which almost made him uneligible to play on Monday. He gutted it out. He took multiple IVs, but it was reported that he lost 8 pounds since Saturday night into Monday night, just because that's how much his body was trying to get rid of the food poisoning. So, that takes a while for your body to recover from that. And like, obviously they're working with them. I expect him to play. And the other side of that is Julio Jones left with a hamstring injury again. Like we talked about this when they signed him. Like, can Julio stay healthy? We saw this last year. He had a hamstring injury. He came back too early, hurt his hamstring again. I'm not saying that's what happened again this season, but this guy apparently needs some extra rest. I'm not a doctor. It's just based on watching football and following injury reports, but it seems like he's not able to recover as quickly as he used to. I expect him to be out again and miss another game, which will be a big blow for the Tennessee Titans. But they do still have Brown, which even on a pitch count, he's probably better than a flex option that you can start if you have to look at it that way. And then they have Derrick Henry, like you said. He has that impressive stat that's 125 yards and 3 touchdowns. I am curious. It did come across to me a little bit like a inflated stat. I'm not trying to discredit what it is, but I wonder because he's been used a lot more in the passing game this year, which is great for fantasy. But how many of those?
I've been hoping for how long?
I know, but how many of those 125 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, and then the one guy had a receiving touchdown? Like, I feel like there's been if it was total touchdowns, how much closer would that line be? I don't know. I didn't look up the stats, but that was the one thing that stuck out to my mind because there's been I feel like if you did total touchdowns 2 seasons ago, that was Christian McCaffrey every game. That's
true.
So, but don't get me wrong. That is not a shot at Derrick Henry. The dude is a beast. He has he's going to win the rushing title because no other running back can stay healthy. He pretty much already won it at this point because
Derrick Henry after contact is currently winning in rushing yards.
That's every year though. But the after contact thing, after the contact thing again is another because it's literally any touch. So if someone a defensive line puts his hand on him or touches his shoulder pad, which again, I mean, sometimes if it's a smaller running back, that can happen and they'll take him down. But we're talking about Derrick Henry. If I was in open space and touched his shoulder pad, he'd have me flying like Josh Norman. So it's a give or take. It's impressive, but it's also not as impressive because of how impressive of a person. I don't even know if that makes sense. But if you get what I'm saying, Derrick Henry is a beast. I'll give him credit for that. And you're going to play him. And that's enough Titans talk. Tyler's not here.
Yeah.
I talk about the Titans a lot. I hyped him up. I'm tired of doing it. And we got to move on to a team that's really the best team, the most impressive, the best team.
Washington football team?
No, that's the Green Bay Packers. And
Oh,
they're
okay.
hosting the Washington football team. And they're wearing their new jerseys. And let me just tell you, I'm so excited. The jerseys they're so clean. Even in practice, I'm getting excited watching these guys run around with practice jerseys and the solid yellow helmets. Like, I think I'm more excited for the jerseys on the field than I am the game. I'm not gonna lie. But speaking of the game, surprisingly, I thought we were going to get MVS back this week. It doesn't appear that way. Looks like he's still having some issues with his hamstring injury. David Bakhtiari is back practicing, but he hasn't played football in 10 months, so I don't think that they'll roll him out there. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Bakhtiari's not back until after the Arizona game because we play on a short week coming on Thursday. The football team, they got Antonio Gibson back at practice, and Ricky Seals-Jones, who I think is a solid start this week, especially at tight end. But they still have question marks with their other offensive weapons. A lot of injuries between these two teams. So pretty much, if it's a star player, Packers-wise, Rodgers, Jones, Adams, football team-wise, Terry McLaurin, those guys are in your lineup. Maybe if you're, I get bias or deep, and I'll let you chime in on this too. I could see, rolling out J.D. McKissic as a flex option. Maybe Gibson, he's been banged up. He's dealing with an injury that seems to be nagging. He has to take some drives off. The Packers haven't been great. They've been better than in years past, but they're still not great at stopping the run. McKissic can be used in the backfield, half-point PPR. I do like McKissic as a flex option if needed.
So, yeah, no, I actually rolled out McKissic by necessity because of injuries last week in the league, and it paid off for me. Got about 13, I think it was, half PPR points, paid off there. I'm buying into this game being a script of Packers go up, Washington playing from behind. So not only do I think that makes McKissic relevant because they're probably going to put in the passing down back, get him a couple of catches, probably make him relevant, hope he scores a touchdown. It might also bring A.J. Dillon into the mix too. If you're desperate, I actually don't hate that play either because this is a game script where he could get 10, 11 carries and you hope he gets in the end zone. But even yet 10, 11 carries, he could score a decent, get a decent score for you this week.
Yeah, I like AJ Dillon. I love AJ Dillon. I've never denied that. Hopefully, if you're in our League of Records, you didn't hear that because I had to cut AJ Dillon to pick up some people so I could at least start a quarterback and a running back, or not a running back, and a tight end because I didn't have any of those guys because they're all on bye. So I'm trying to get him back next week. So in the league, which is our League of Record name, for the 8 other people that are in it, AJ Dillon is going to suck. For all our other listeners, I do like AJ Dillon this week.
All right. Well, you're lucky that I already filled that running back spot with one Demetric Felton. And again, you guys will know how that worked out for me when you listen to this. I do not know yet. But I think that pretty much wraps up Washington and Green Bay. Move on down to Miami. Move on down to Miami where the Dolphins are hosting the Atlanta Falcons. Interesting game here for fantasy. The Falcons coming off the bye. They're getting healthier. Calvin Ridley's back. Still love Cordarrelle Patterson. Miami's been struggling. I mean, I know they got Tua back. They looked a little better last week, but we normally think when Atlanta has a chance to be ahead, we like Mike Davis. Do you like Mike Davis in this matchup?
Sure. I mean, I'm all aboard the Matt Ryan to Calvin Ridley. Like, Matt Ryan was a waiver target if you needed a quarterback. If you had Herbert, Allen, Dak, one of those guys, I liked adding Matt Ryan this week, especially if you have Calvin Ridley. I think this would be Calvin Ridley's game that reminds you of why you drafted him end of the second, early third round. I'm a huge fan of those. I like Mike Davis. I know Cordarrelle Patterson has been the fantasy scorer, but he's still he's done it consistently, but yet I'm still hesitant about playing him because he's still only being out there like 30 to 45% of the snaps. Like, when the 45 is on a good week, he still has such a small role, even though they're using it to perfection. But eventually, the production is going to catch up to the amount of time he's out there. I feel like there's going to be a little bit of regression. Mike Davis, hey, if Atlanta can get up quick, I like Mike Davis. So, and Kyle Pitts, another good week for Kyle Pitts. after his bye or his game in London. I maybe I'm overselling the Falcons, like maybe because they were on bye and I forgot how bad they were playing. Like I'm
And
seeing
they
them
looked good
as like
before the bye.
they did look good in London, but maybe I'm just thinking
Yeah.
like back a few years ago to when they were really good. But I'm really excited for the Falcons offense in this matchup, and that just goes because the Dolphins defense has been not great. It's been it's been the second biggest surprise behind how bad the Washington football team defense has been. It's right there. The next thing is like what happened to Miami's Dolphins. Now they have injuries in their secondary. It's just another reason why I love Kyle Pitts, Calvin Ridley this week. But from the Dolphins standpoint, like I like Myles Gaskin this week, and I know I feel like I said, but I think the Falcons defense, that's their weak spot. Like Myles Gaskins is a good pick. Jalen Waddle, he's probably a solid play. Tua, I know he was a top waiver. I don't know he threw for like 40 some passes, but I still have a hard time believing like that's the Tua that the Dolphins actually want to run with. Like I feel like they're gonna try to slow the game down, more ground attack. Maybe it's just me hoping Myles Gaskin finally breaks out because I have a weird obsession with Myles Gaskin. I don't understand where that came from.
He's a fantasy my guy. It's fine. I mean, I agree with you everything there for Miami. I think it's a good week for Gaskin. I'm high on Jalen Waddle this week. I
You're
think
high
him
on
with
Jalen
Tua
Waddle
back
every week, man.
him with Tua back, I think is going to make a big difference. He's played 2 games with Tua and looked good, so hoping that continues. And it was the Jacoby Brissett thing that was really holding him down. But I want to go back to Cordarrelle Patterson before we wrap this game up and calm you down a little bit, because you say he's not on the field all that much, but when he's on the field, he's being used. I want to compare him, I know you don't like comparing players, to Kareem Hunt, because Kareem Hunt is not on the field that much either. Yet that guy is currently in the top 10 in running backs, at least before he got hurt, because every time he's on the field, it seems like he's getting the ball almost every single play. It's just they try to get him the ball when he's on the field. The same thing's happening with Cordarrelle Patterson. The volume is there despite him not getting the snaps. So I have no problem rolling him out because he's somebody that is a focal point of the offense when he is on the field.
Yeah, that's I get what you're saying. I hear
Mm-hmm.
you. I do think if you look at snap percentage wise, uh, I do think Kareem Hunt is a little bit higher. I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, and again, they're very similar in the sense that they're running backs, but they're pass catchers for. I mean, I think Kareem Hunt is definitely more of a running back than
Yes, yeah.
Cordarrelle Patterson. But I also think there's something to do with the offense too. Like the Browns run their offense to their running backs. I'm not sure that's the Falcons' game plan is to rely on the running back. So again, you're probably playing Cordarrelle Patterson this week. Like again, this is not. Don't listen to what I'm not saying, because he's been so productive. It's bipocalypse. You're going to play Cordarrelle Patterson. I'm just trying to temper expectations to if you do play him and he doesn't pan out well, whether it's this week or next week or down the line, just know eventually, if you're on the field only 30% of the time, but you're scoring 2 touchdowns a game, eventually that's going to stop. That's all
Fair.
I'm trying to say.
Okay. I get you there. But for now, we're rolling with him. And we can go wrap the 1 o'clock games up by traveling to Baltimore, where the Ravens are hosting the Cincinnati Bengals. Great game, actually. If I'm being honest, I think that's one of my favorite 1 o'clock window games there. But we can start with the Bengals side of the ball here. Joe Mixon appears to be getting back to fully healthy. He had a pretty much full workload last week, went off for you. They did activate Samaje Perine, but I don't think I'm worried about it. I think we're going to go back to seeing the Joe Mixon who gets 20 plus carries a game. It seems like they want to do that, and for fantasy, we thank you. Wide receivers, we do this every week. Which of the 3 wide receivers are you liking the best against Baltimore?
I like Jamar Chase the best, then T. Higgins, then Tyler Boyd.
Okay.
Maybe. That's what I'm going to go with right now when recording this episode. Jamar Chase is one. I feel like moving forward, Jamar Chase is the top guy. He's more than just a deep threat. He's a guy that Burrow looks forward. So Jamar Chase, you can start pretty much every week with confidence. I feel like T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd are going to go back and forth on who will be wide receiver 2 which week. I mean, unfortunately, it just won't be on the odds. It's Tyler Boyd that evens T. Higgins. Make it real easy for fantasy owners. It doesn't work like that. But in this matchup, it's tough because I would have said play everybody. 2 weeks ago. But then I watched the Ravens stop the high-powered Chargers offense. And now I'm like, whoa, was that a 1-week fluke, or are the Ravens defense back? That's my only concern. The Bengals don't have AJ Green anymore, which used to always go for like 200 yards and 3 touchdowns when they went to Baltimore. I don't know if Jamar Chase can just fill in for that role, or if they're going to like spread it out. Again, I agree with you. I think this is one of the better 1 o'clock matchups. Everyone's talking about how good the Ravens are now, but if the Bengals can win this game, they're like right there in the AFC North. This is another good test for them. The division rivals always play tough. I agree with you, Joe Mixon. He looks back. He looks good. Samaje Perine, you can cut him. I don't even think. I think Chris Evans has taken over as RB2. The rookie, they're getting him involved in the pass game. I know Perine was out last week, but everything I've heard is they love Chris Evans. I think he'll more and more as the season progresses take over RB2. He made a hell of a catch down the sideline on against the Lions. Captain America. He's looking pretty good. No, obviously, I'm not saying play Chris Evans. Like, I'm not trying to get. I'm just saying you can get rid of Samaje Perine, who we thought might be the handcuff for Joe Mixon. If you're in a deep league and have bench spots for some reason, and you want to, or have Joe Mixon, you want to grab Chris Evans because you like having your top running back a handcuff, but I wouldn't trust playing him. And then the Ravens, Lamar Jackson. I love Lamar Jackson. People criticize his throwing ability. I'm like, he's just so fun to watch. He's so entertaining. And he has improved as a passer. Like they said he worked on it this offseason, and it's noticeably different with Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, and you can see it with their fantasy relevant studs too. Like Hollywood Brown was a borderline droppable player last year, and now he is a solid wide receiver too so far this season. Rashad Bateman's somebody that we've been banging the table to add to your bench and hold on to, because I think as he starts getting more into this offense, he's going to be somebody who could help you down the stretch. We never would have said that about Baltimore Ravens wide receivers the last 3 years. But now on top of having Lamar with your running ability, he's now throwing the ball as well, bringing more people into the offense. And it's been at the cost of the running back so far. And part of the reason is because obviously they had the running back injuries. They're down to running backs like 6, 7, and 8 at this point. As much as the names might be Latavius Murray, Le'Veon Bell, and Devontae Freeman, it's not the running backs that they wanted in that backfield. And Latavius Murray is hurt now. Not shocking, another running back injury for the Ravens. Don't think he's going to play, but he may. We had to watch injury reports. Let's say he doesn't play, because I think that's the more likely scenario. People are looking for running backs. Do you like, I'm guessing Le'Veon Bell is the lead back, or Devontae Freeman? What do you think?
I honestly think if Freeman would be the lead back, or they would, I think from what I've seen in weeks past, Freeman would take over as the lead role, but I also wouldn't be shocked if they give Tyson Williams another shot, let him try to get back. I know the reason he hasn't been the lead guy is because he has missed a lot of pass blocking assignments, a lot of gap assignments. Like he didn't lose a starting job for his running ability. He lost it for everything else you do as an NFL running back. So maybe they'll try to see how much that's improved. But it's tough. It's crazy to say there's not a Ravens running back I want to play this week, especially during Bipocalypse. But that's the truth. The Ravens are a passing team. Like,
that's insane.
Yeah. If you would have told me by week 7, I'd be saying that the Ravens are a pass first team. I've been like, what are you talking about? But that's the truth. Like, they live and die by the pass, and then Lamar Jackson's running ability. Like, there's not a great running back option out there for the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only person I didn't mention was Mark Andrews. He's in your lineup every week now, I think, until further notice, just because
he's in your lineup every
with them
week.
Running the ball
every week. Like, there's not enough good tight ends for him to ever be considered out of your lineup.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And he is still a focal point of that passing attack. That has not changed. That wraps up 1 o'clock. Moving to 4 o'clock. The Detroit Lions are traveling to the Los Angeles Rams. Starting the Lions side, because it should be pretty fast. Jared Goff this week? No.
DeAndre Swift, that's it.
DeAndre Swift, TJ Hawkinson.
Oh yeah, I always forget about Hawkinson, but I put him with the Mark Andrews and the Darren Waller. Like, you don't even got to mention him. I mean, I know he has really fallen off, but like, there's not enough.
He had a
like,
good week again last week.
Yeah, he had a good week again last week. I mean, he's going to get targets. This is the Jared Goff revenge game, so maybe he goes out and balls out.
And then the Matthew Stafford revenge game on the other side. This is just.
But it's more for Jared Goff because they're going to LA.
You're right.
But yeah, Swift and Hawkinson, they're like the only two Lions guys you can trust. I know he had about as bad as a fantasy performance as you could. If you're super desperate, I wouldn't mind the Amon-Ra St. Brown flex. But again, that's only if you're super desperate.
I mean, I'll throw it out there here because we go to the Rams side quick. You're starting Cooper Kupp. You're probably starting Robert Woods. So we're put Amon-Ra St. Brown against a Van Jefferson.
Yep, St. Brown.
Okay. Just to give a little benchmark there of where we're at on that one. And obviously you're starting Matt Stafford and you're starting Darrell Henderson. Anyone else from that Rams side that you would think about in a good matchup?
Higbee, I guess, is on the dartboard. Probably a solid option. I just want to give a shout out to Darrell Henderson. That double move double move go route he ran against the Giants on the outside last week was beautiful for a running back.
He looked like a wide receiver.
It was great. It was great to see.
Yeah. He's kind of become a do-it-all player. He's impressive. I mean, he never really started when he had all these opportunities before. He finally got the shot, and he's running with it. No pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, he's reminding people that he was a third-round pick for a reason. Like, he was a guy that people loved coming out of the draft. Like, that people were shocked that they took Cam Akers because of how his talent level. And when Cam Akers is back next year, that is going to be a scary running back duo. But we're only in week 7. We can't get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's move on to the next game. We'll talk about this one real quick because the team's not very good. That's the Philadelphia Eagles. They're going to the Las Vegas Raiders. George, go ahead and break down the Philadelphia Eagles.
Jalen Hurts is a play every week. Dallas Goedert is back off the COVID list, and no more Zach Ertz. I think Dallas Goedert is moving into that start pretty much every week territory. Unless Tyree Jackson, who is a young tight end who is coming off injured reserve, they like him. They might start giving him maybe some of the Zach Ertz role when he's back. He's not back yet. So definitely Dallas Goedert this week, but that's something we'll keep an eye on as he gets integrated into the offense. I would probably play a Devontae Smith this week because you need wide receivers. Everyone's on bye. That's probably it. I don't think there's anyone else on the Eagles side.
I got 2 quick comments.
Okay.
Oh, actually, it's 3. I agree. Devontae Smith is a play. I know that the Tyree Jackson thing. Like, I understand why you're telling the listeners that, but I could not get, like, because I know you. I've known you for so long. There's always like the undrafted wide receiver that you fall in love with, and like I got the same vibes when you started talking about Tyree Jackson. I'm like, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but like in 2 weeks he'll have like a 2 touchdown game, and George will be like, man, it's like Zach Ertz never left. He's like better than Super Bowl era Zach Ertz. Like that. That's just how George is. He gets very excited. But it is a name worth mentioning. And then Jalen Hurts.
I'm only really saying, like, honestly, he had a good preseason, but I'm trying to get out of that. But I think the big thing is how the coaching staff is talking him up. And they're talking about how the coaching staff is trying to get him involved. And we've seen so many times this season where it's like, oh, Kadarius Toney needs to get involved in the offense, goes off for 20 points next week. Not going to be Tyree Jackson, but it could be something that hurts Dallas Goedert's snap count.
No, I agree. It was even reported that Jackson was one of the reasons they finally felt comfortable moving on from Zach Ertz. So it's good notice. It was just something that stuck out in my mind. And then Jalen Hurts.
Yes.
I agree. He is a starter most weeks because of his poor throwing rushing ability, but he has rushing ability. Now, I did put him in the start or the sit in the sit start article this week. And it was a deep cut. And you probably can't afford to bench Jalen Hurts. He's quarterback 5 on the season, and you're not going to bench him on a week when there's not that many options. But it was more of just understand expectations. He's had 2 rushing touchdowns in back-to-back games. Like, those numbers aren't consistent numbers. he's struggling to throw for 150 yards. So if he's not getting into the end zone, he is like the definition of a boom or bust player, and he has boomed pretty much all season. Eventually he will bust. So when you start playing the probabilities, you start understanding, well, the Raiders defense, they're really good against the run. They're really good against the pass rush. You can beat them in the secondary, but that's where Jalen Hurts has been struggling. So again, I'm not advocating for you to absolutely sit Jalen Hurts, but there is some streamable options. Like, I would rather play Matt Ryan this week than Jalen Hurts. That's just me. I think the matchup is a lot better for them, and I think Jalen Hurts might actually struggle a little bit. Again, that's playing a little bit of the probability, but just something to keep in the back of your mind. But let's pivot over to those Raiders. And I'm going to, we talked about Derek Carr. I think he has a decent option to play this week. He's the second not the second leading, but he's number 2 in passing yards. He's been airing it out. Darius Slay has been like lockdown cornerback, but no one is catching balls on him this year. Who's he going to cover? They're not going to put him on Darren Waller, except unless Darren Waller lines up outside, then maybe he would. But I don't expect them to put him on Darren Waller. Is he fast enough at his age to keep up with the Henry Ruggs? Like, can Henry Ruggs still take advantage of him? Will they keep him on Bryan Edwards, who only catches balls in the fourth quarter, which might be a good idea for the Eagles? With Darius Slay and there not being a true number 1 wide receiver in Las Vegas, is there any of those guys you're willing to start this week with Bipocalypse?
I'm most confident in Hunter Renfrow.
Hunter Renfrow.
I've come off the Henry Ruggs train just a little bit. I mean, he could end up being a guy that gets a long touchdown and gets you a good week. That's just what he is. It seems like he's trying to go back into that instead of getting the consistent 5-6 catches a game that we were hoping for. But Renfrow is the more consistent option. He's the guy that's going to most likely get you the 5-6 catches. I think he kind of slides under the radar enough that, I mean, they might play Slay on a side this week, and it just depends on who the Raiders line up against him. But I think Renfrow is going to be the guy that has the best chance of getting you a solid 10 to 15 point week. And so he would be my guy. And he's actually available on a lot of waiver wires still, what I've noticed, just because people don't love the idea of playing him. But this week it might be a good play.
Yeah, I'll take your word for it. I'm still struggling with what to do with the Raiders wide receivers. It's crazy because I feel like
give Bryan Edwards the ball and we would be like, yeah, it's him.
For sure. Running backs.
Yep.
Josh Jacobs. I mean, the Eagles used to think of them as like stopping the run. They've struggled with that the last few weeks. Is this a good Josh Jacobs game? Are you willing to roll out Kenyon Drake after he found the end zone last week? If you're in need of a running back, where are you at with the Raiders running backs?
If I'm picking anybody, it's Josh Jacobs. I think you probably do have to play him in the situation. The only thing that scares me with Kenyon Drake is we finally had a Kenyon Drake sighting. He got 2 touchdowns, but the carries and touches still weren't there. He just happened to get lucky enough to get in the end zone. Like, maybe the new coaching staff will start to get him more involved now. That's the hope. I really hope they do. But for now, he still has to stay on the bench, in my opinion, and you're rolling out Josh Jacobs.
Alrighty, let's move on to probably the most lopsided matchup of the weekend, so that can only mean the Houston Texans will get the victory. But the Arizona Cardinals are hosting the Houston Texans, the DeAndre Hopkins revenge game. Yeah. Brandon Cooks for the Texans. We'll say that every week, and then you can move on. And that's only for 2 weeks until Brandon Cooks get traded, and then we won't even talk about the Texans anymore. Then the Arizona Cardinals, you know what's coming. After Hopkins, is it still AJ Green this week? Christian Kirk, Rondell Moore.
And you see, like, the Texans offense has had these weeks where all of a sudden they'll boom and they'll put up a bunch of points and they might pace the Cardinals and make the Cardinals throw the ball more. If that happens, you might see 3 wide receivers from the Cardinals have a good game just because the Texans secondary is not going to be able to slow them down. Right now, it's DeAndre Hopkins and AJ Green, in my opinion. I think you expected me to say AJ Green. After that, I don't feel confident because I'm not convinced that the Texans are going to pace them enough. When it comes to running backs, I like Chase Edmonds and James Conner this week because I feel like if they get up, it's just going to be carry. You might have to temper expectations on Kyler Murray unless he happens to get a rushing touchdown and some rushing yards because I feel like he might not have to throw all that much.
Or finish
I'm not
the
saying
game.
bench him either. Or finish the game. I'm not saying bench him, though, either, because there's a chance he puts up 20 points in the first quarter and it's done. But you don't know.
Yeah, I'm not trying to, like, but if you think back to last season when the Buccaneers went to Detroit and Tom Brady put up like 400 yards in 3 quarters and then didn't play but still had a huge day, like, that's what we're talking about with Kyler Murray.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you're not benching him because you think he's not going to get enough opportunity. No, for sure. Last question on the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Ertz, the new guy. Are you rolling him out right away?
The matchup's fantastic. You're missing a lot of big tight ends this week. I mean, you're missing Dawson Knox. You're missing Dalton Schultz.
I
don't know. I would probably say no, but at the same time, I feel like I've been burned before where it's like, don't start this tight end yet this week. And then he had a decent week, but probably not. No, I would go with no.
Yeah, I'm a no for Well, you got me thinking of Dawson Knox. Hopefully he injures his hand quickly, but not injures his hand quickly, recovers from his injury of his hand quickly. He already injured it. I'm so sorry. But back to Zach Ertz. It's just, I know he had 10 days almost because he got traded right after the Thursday game. He was there on the sidelines last week. He was around. But don't forget the Cardinals coaching staff, a lot of them missed time because of COVID. They weren't around him. They didn't get to know him as much. The matchup's so good, but they might score a lot of points and he might have limited opportunity to truly get him involved. If you can hold on to him this week, I think you might be able to find some better options. But let's move on. We got one more game on the 4 o'clock slate. Well, the 4 o'clock Eastern slate. If you're on the West Coast, congratulations. You're now watching a 1 o'clock game. But that's the Chicago Bears at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There's not really a revenge game here, but it is Ohio State quarterback versus Michigan quarterback. So I know that's a huge rivalry on Saturdays.
From like 3 decades apart.
But it's still blue versus red. It's still, it would be a big noon kickoff if it was a Saturday game. Just saying.
You're not kidding. You're right.
But we'll hit the Buccaneers first because I think that's the easy one. Okay. Leonard Fournette, he's in.
Mm-hmm.
Which wide receivers? Maybe
Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. I'm still sketchy about Antonio Brown every week, but the 2 locks are Evans and Godwin.
Okay. I feel like Antonio Brown. I like Antonio Brown. Ooh, I think it's going to sound so gross to say, but in fantasy, I think Antonio Brown might be my favorite Buck player.
That's insane.
Because that's just the guy that Brady looks for. Like, I know he's super boomer bust, but I think he's my favorite Bucks wide receiver to start because we've seen them all put up duds. So I feel like when they're in a pinch, Brady's going to try to find Antonio Brown. But, like you said, you could probably play all 3 of them this week. It's a pretty decent matchup. The Chicago Bears, though, Damien Williams, I believe, is getting activated off the COVID list.
So there's an interesting situation with him because we found out he's not vaccinated. So there was a 10-day window. The 10-day window is over on Saturday, but I still think there's a couple other hoops he has to jump through with negative tests and no symptoms. I think it's going to work out for him, but it's something to keep an eye on and maybe add Khalil Herbert.
Yeah. Even if Williams doesn't go and Herbert's the guy, as much as they have proved over the last 2 weeks that they run the ball no matter who is there, don't forget.
Thank you guys. Love you.
Good night. But don't forget that Khalil Herbert and Damien Williams are going up against the Buccaneers defense. They held the Patriots a few weeks ago to -1 rushing yards. It is a very hard team to run the ball against. The Bears are going to try. I'm not saying they'll be successful. So they're just 2 run. And if Williams does play after not practicing, after Herbert does, it looks like it's going to be a running back by committee. And I don't think there's going to be enough opportunity for both of them to feel confident starting either of them. As sad as I think that is, like that's just where they're going because Herbert has looked really good in the last 2 weeks. So I don't really like any of the Bears running backs, and I don't really like any of the Bears wide receivers because like I don't understand and try to make the. How did Allen Robinson look so good with Blake Bortles, Mitchell Trubisky, Nick Foles, but then Andy Dalton and Justin Fields, like he can't do anything.
I wish I could tell you. And I mean, I've been trying to play this whole is it the scheme thing? Like, did they change something? And I find it hard to believe because it's the same head coach. It's just different quarterbacks. I don't know. Maybe it's the feud. I'm at a loss for words.
Yeah, you have like a few weeks left in fantasy before the fantasy trade deadline. I would try to move Allen Robinson, find the guy who has like everyone has in their league that is a football fan, but is a football fan of his team, and then just watches ESPN. You could probably trade Allen Robinson him based on his name alone. But yeah, there's not a lot of Bears options out there, and I think George is raising his hand. So yes, George, what would you like to say?
I want to play devil's advocate on the Bears running backs for you. So I get it how Tampa Bay is really good against the run game. The Eagles have not been the best rushing team outside of their quarterback. Last week, Miles Sanders, with his 9 carries, averaged over 5 yards a carry. That's impressive. And with the Bears tending to give their running backs 20, 25 carries, you still don't think that there's a chance they could pop 100 yards or get a touchdown or two?
Not a single guy. Like even if I don't think Herbert would do it. And like I said, if what we expect Williams to be back, I mean, I understand he has stuff to jump through and it'll be but we still expect Williams to be back. I think it's going to be a split. I mean, if you have to play one of those guys because you have people on bye, you're hoping they get into the end zone. I'm not saying one of them won't get into the end zone. And if Williams doesn't go, I mean, Herbert has the best chance to make the end zone. It's not a matchup that I would want to play a running back against because we've seen how dominant that front is for Tampa Bay. And the Bears defense is their best part, but I think the Buccaneers are still going to be put up points, so they might have to fade away from the run game a little bit to try to keep up. It's not a great matchup. I get what you're saying. Miles Sanders averaged 5 yards a carry, but yet they still only use them 9 times in a game. Like
that's just the Eagles, though. That's not
I get that. I don't understand what they're doing. Miles Sanders is a good running back. He needs to go somewhere else, and because the Eagles aren't using him right. But that's another story or another topic for another day. We have the Sunday night game, which is the Indianapolis Colts at the San Francisco 49ers. Indianapolis Colts, Jonathan Taylor is a lock in your lineups pretty much every week at this point. Carson Wentz, he's looked pretty good the last few weeks. I like him a lot in this matchup. He's one of the guys I picked up during Bipocalypse that I was able to get on waivers that I think is in a plus matchup. They've lost Paris Campbell to the IR. T.Y. Hilton is banged up again. So I'm going to say it again. You play Michael Pittman. He is the top guy. Michael Pittman is a good player. He makes tough catches look easy sometimes. Like you can go ahead and start Michael Pittman. Outside of those 3 options, though, I'm not. If you're desperate at a tight end, nope. I'm not even going to say you could roll with Mo Alley-Cox. Like, I'm not going to go with that. No, watch. It'll be his 2 touchdown game, and he'll be like tight end 4 on the week, and
he gets one of them a year. So
exactly, it might be this game. But outside of that, that's pretty much all I got for the Colts. The 49ers, I don't think we officially know who the quarterback's going to be yet. I think everyone's
leaning Garoppolo.
I was going to say it's leaning Garoppolo because I haven't seen if Trey Lance is even practicing this week. I haven't looked at that injury report, which I'll do while you're talking just to confirm. But running back wise, I'm just going to let you talk about the 49ers because this one is so complicated.
I'm going to let you pull up the injury report because I want to also talk about their running backs, but I'm not exactly sure the status of Jeff Wilson, guy who we've been talking about stashing for when he comes back. And he is right around that window of being able to come back from his injury. It just depends on his health now. It's none of the he's locked because of the PUP list. If he doesn't go, I like Eli Mitchell in this game. I mean, because I think he's going to be the guy who get enough carries that there's enough volume there, despite being in a bad matchup. We're starting Deebo Samuel. And we're back to the Brandon Ayuk debate where I'm actually to the point where I'm cutting him in some leagues. Like I don't know what's going on. I don't really love like cutting him, but there's situations where I needed stuff for buys or this or that, and it had to happen. But he's definitely not in my starting lineup. I hope he comes back around and can end up being a guy that you maybe steal off the waiver wire in a couple of weeks and he carries you down the stretch. But for now, there's no sign of that. It's just Deebo Samuel. And none of the tight ends are really relevant now that George Kittle's gone. So I think we're back then to the running backs. I hope, Cody, you got some injury report information on us for the quarterbacks and maybe even Jeff Wilson.
Yep, I was correct. Trey Lance isn't practicing. Jimmy Garoppolo has been limited, so I expect Garoppolo to roll out there. They haven't. Wilson is on the PUP list, so even if he was practicing, they don't have to put him on the injury report because he's still technically on the PUP list. And again, even I think they're going to let him practice a week or two before they roll him out there. And I know we've been high on Jeff Wilson. I'm not even ready to say that Jeff Wilson is instantly in my starting lineup the first week. I could see them doing like a 50-50 split his first week back just to like slowly ease him in. I do think he'll take over as the starter by like the second week he's back fully in the lineup. But so Jeff Wilson isn't in play for me this week, even if he does get activated. But yeah, it's Brandon Ayuk is a big question mark for this year, and maybe the bye week helped him. So maybe if you're like George, it's a Sunday night game. Again, it's tough because of the bye week, and you have so many people on the bench that you would never cut, but they're on bye. But if you're able to cut players on your bench that played, even though they weren't in your lineup, you're able to cut them. Pick up Brandon Ayuk on Sunday night after the games, just to. If somebody did cut him, because after the bye, maybe they reworked him into the playbook and now he's, back to being the number one guy. Highly unlikely, but those are the kind of moves that could win you a fantasy championship down the road because you're beating the waivers, you're beating the fab rush. So just something to keep in mind there. We do have one more game. Start Deebo Samuel. I don't know if any of us said that, but start Deebo Samuel.
I did, yeah.
Okay, I figured George did, but you always can't count on George. I mean, most of the times you can, but then he'll tell you that Travis Fulgham is like the best wide receiver in the NFL. And then
moving on to the Seattle Seahawks hosting the New Orleans Saints. And I want to talk about a guy who I have all the time, and I want to get your opinion. It's Tyler Lockett. So, I mean, DK Metcalf in this conversation a little bit as well, because with Russell Wilson out, Seahawks offense is not looking fantastic, but I think Tyler Lockett benefited a lot more from Russell Wilson than even DK Metcalf did. And I, as a Lockett owner, am concerned. So I want your opinion on, do you keep rolling him out in your lineup, or is he someone that you could probably stash on the bench and kind of ride out without Russell Wilson, just not playing him?
Yeah, Tyler Lockett is tough. He's on the sit list on the article on the website. And hasn't broken 8.2 points in the last 4 weeks. And they've only been missing Russ for one of those. And 8 points was like 1 week, and then the other ones have been like closer to 5 points. So he has been struggling after his 2 20-plus point games in weeks 1 and 2. So with Lockett, that upside potential is there. He's just one of those guys that his consistency has always been in question. He's a guy that will finish the year as a top 24 wide receiver, and you'll look back and be like 20-point game, 20-point game, 4, 4, 4, 4, 24-point game, 4, 4. And then when you put all the points together, it looks like he was consistent, but he just isn't.
Mm-hmm.
The matchup isn't the best. There's Geno Smith. Like, there might not be any running. Like, you don't have the running backs there to take some pressure off that. I don't love Tyler Lockett this week, but I don't think you're at a point where you can convince me that some guy off the streets would be a better option than the boom potential of Tyler Lockett.
All right, I'll give you a couple guys in my league of record team compared to Tyler Lockett. So first, Tyler Lockett or Jalen Waddle?
I'd probably go. You're going to go Waddle, but I would probably go Lockett.
Okay.
No, I'd
Tyler
probably go
Lockett.
Waddle.
You probably go. Okay. Tyler Lockett or Michael Pittman?
Oh, I would for sure go Michael Pittman.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. Because that's a situation where it's like, it almost seems insane to me to bench a Tyler Lockett, but they're two mid-tier wide receivers who are playing fairly well, and you probably have you would at least think about or probably would play him over Tyler Lockett right now. I mean, if Russell Wilson was in the lineup, I think it'd be different. It'd be Tyler Lockett's almost a lock in your lineup because there's a much better chance of him going off for that
for
24
sure,
points.
100%. If Russell Wilson was playing, it would have been Tyler Lockett for both of those. I like Michael Pittman better. The Jalen Waddle one is tough for me because I'm not a huge Jalen Waddle fan. He reminds me. I know we debated like Henry Ruggs a couple weeks ago, and I'm not just putting them up there because they're both speed guys out of Alabama, but like I get the same vibes from them. Like I see their potential. They just haven't put it together for me yet. Now I will say
I mentioned this also with. Okay, sorry, I thought you were.
Nope, go ahead. I was done talking anyways.
Okay, so I mentioned this also with DK Metcalf in that conversation, and we kind of pivoted over to Lockett. Is there any concern on Metcalf with this whole thing too, or you think he's going to be the more consistent guy with Geno Smith in there?
It seemed, and again, it was one game with Geno Smith. It's hard to judge. It did seem like DK Metcalf was more of a guy he was willing to target. Again, that could completely pivot. I would say you can play DK Metcalf, but go in with expectations that this isn't last year's DK Metcalf. Like you're going into this game the same way you did last year as is it a Metcalf game or a Lockett game? But then it was like the Steelers receivers when they had Duck Hodges in. It was like, okay, one of them was going to get some points. You don't really know which one it is, but the other guy is not going to do well at all. Like that's what we're talking about. Like it's not the same high-powered offense. So just take 10 points off of what you got, each guy. One of them will get 14 and one of them will get 4. When with Russ was there, one of them will get 14, the other one will get 24. Like that's where we're at.
Yeah. And when it comes to their running back situation, I mean, the Saints defense is probably, I think it's mid-tier against the running back. I also don't know what the injury report is on Alex Collins. I'm not sure if you have it up, but would you think about a Seattle running back in this situation?
No, I'd probably bench Alex Collins. I think they're number 8 against running backs, if I remember correctly, because Alex Collins is on the sit list as well on the article. And the interesting thing is Rashad Penny. He's expected to come off IR this week. Like, do you trust a guy coming off of IR to be the workhorse? Is it going to be too much of a committee? The Saints defense are pretty good. And the worst part is you have to wait till Monday night. And by waiting till Monday night, that means you have no other options. If one of them or both of them don't go, then you're really stuck. So I would try to avoid this. Get the guys playing on Sunday. I know it's a limited pool with bye apocalypse, but that's where I'm at with the Seahawks. And, George, we've been talking way too long. I feel like this has been one of our longest episodes, and we missed out on 6 games, or not 6 games, 3 games with all the people on buys. So I'm going to wrap it up unless you got anything else to say. But as always, thanks for listening to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. I promise you, we've been saying it for a couple of weeks. We're trying very hard to work with Tyler and his schedule to get him back on the podcast. He misses you guys, and he always wants me to tell you the podcast is more fun for us and more fun for you when you get involved.
And definitely keep us involved on your social media channels. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the Couch GMs. And I kind of want to see from all of you out there, once Bipocalypse is over, what is the lowest winning score we can find? Because I'm sure there's going to be some of these 80 to 65 games with all these guys thrown out there from all these buys. I want to see from you guys when this week's over, what is the lowest winning score from week 7? But anyway, go ahead and check out the CouchGMs.com with Cody's Start Sit article to help you out. And thank you again for listening. For Cody Roadcap, I'm George Kerth, and we'll see you all next week.